Welcome to the Kenoi Church Podcast. We're glad that you're interested in connecting through this teaching time. If you'd like to connect further, feel free to reach out to us through our website, kenoichurch.org. For now, enjoy this teaching from Kenoi Church, where our mission is to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ.
Good morning. Good morning. It is a good morning, right? Around 20 years ago, I was on summer breaks from during college, I was a summer camp counselor. And one particular summer, 1 week of that summer, is specifically memorable to me because I had a group of kids that were pretty difficult for me. I worked at a Bible camp in central Pennsylvania, so most of the kids were what you would expect they would be. They were kids from churches and families, two-parent homes, and most of them had even been to camp before. Kids I would see every summer that I worked there. But this particular cabin, I had kids that were in my cabin tent. I was in a tent, actually, not a cabin, but I'm going to keep saying cabin probably because you'll think I was in like a tent with little pop-up sticks, and that's not the kind of tent I was in. I had two kids that came to camp on scholarship from the city. They swore and they fought. They were big for their age, bigger than all the other kids in the cabin. They didn't care about the rules. They egged all the other kids on to also not listen to the rules. They didn't come from church. They had no idea what a Bible study was. And if I'm honest, I was tired. It was the second to last week of my summer, so I had cabins of kids straight for 7 weeks, and I had 2 weeks of training before that, so I was like 9 weeks deep. So I put up with Roger and Ben. I put up with their junk. I put up with their words, and what I tried to do was focus on the kids that, listened. Focus on the kids that I could do something with, I might have even thought that maybe I could protect the kids that came from good homes, that I could maybe keep them from adopting some of the bad behaviors from some of the kids that probably I figured they thought looked cool, sounded cool. But we were about a day and a half into our week of summer camp when best buddies, Roger and Ben, got into an all-out brawl, and I never even figured out what caused it. But it looked like a cartoon because they started in the tent, and it looked like a bramble. You've seen a cartoon where it just looks like a spinning thing with arms and legs sticking out of it. And that's what it looked like. It started in the tent. They went down the steps and into the woods, and I saw feet, and a shoe flew, and a sandal flew, and I stepped in to try to pull them apart, and somebody punched me in the chin. I'm sure it was by accident. But for me, that was it. That was it. So I hauled both boys up to the office while the rest of my kids followed. The other kids sat on the porch. Roger and Ben, I hauled into the director's office, put them in 2 chairs in front of her, and I said, that is it. I am done. I don't care what you do. Split them up, put them in separate cabins, send them home. I've had it. I'm done. And I'll never forget, Roger was the bigger of the 2 boys. He looked at me, ignored the director. He ignored Jess, that was her name, completely, and he looked right at me. And he said, done. You ain't done nothing. You ain't given us nothing. And Jess, my director, she told me to take a walk. She said, son, I want to watch your kids out on the porch. Take a walk. All right. So I went back to my cabin tent thing. The woods outside of it looked like a war zone. The wash line was torn down. All of our swimsuits were all over the ground. I found Ben's flip-flop over there and Roger's shoe over there. I sat down on the porch steps, and after a while, Jess found me, and she came over, and she just said, "Why are you here? Like, why are you here? What are you doing at this camp?" And I said, "I'm here because I love kids, and I want them to know Jesus, and I want to make a difference in their life, even if it's just for a week." And Jess knew me. Like, she knew that wasn't a canned answer. That was a true answer. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't fake. So she didn't push me on it. But here's what she said. She said, "Then get up, because the mission isn't over. Roger and Ben are still yours, and I have some ideas." I didn't want to get up. And I didn't want her to say that they were still mine. Her idea, while the rest of the camp went together and did a worship service, kind of like we're having today. Music, a speaker. While the rest of the camp did that, me and my kids were going to go to a separate spot with somebody else. All the kids were going to get blindfolded, and I wasn't allowed to speak. And together, we were going to have to set up a tent. And now it's the kind of tent you're thinking about, with the poles and everything. And we had to do it in 5 minutes. And we were going to have to keep doing it over and over and over until we could do it in 5 minutes. And somehow, that was going to teach us to work together, not to fight, and to trust each other, and they were going to have to listen to my directions to do it. It took us hours. Long after the worship service was over and long after everybody else was off to doing the next fun thing, we were still in that room with that person setting up that darn tent. It took hours to do it one time in 5 minutes. And I don't know if it was the success of that initiative. It might have been Jess's words. They're still yours. Get up, the mission isn't over. It might have been that I remembered it was my 7th or 8th or 9th week of the summer, but it was their first. And some of the kids in my cabin had been to camp before, but Roger and Ben, it was their first time ever. So it doesn't matter if it was my 7th. It was their first. Roger and Ben had no basis for church. They didn't even know what a Bible study was. So if I was going to have to do a Bible study with them every day, I needed to throw out the Bible. I needed to start somewhere way before the Bible. And to be honest with you, all the kids that weren't Roger and Ben, it probably would do them pretty well to start somewhere before the Bible too. So we changed the way we did our lessons. We changed the way we did our cabin time. We tried to make our little cabin into something more than a cabin. Something like a little family unit. And for the rest of the week, we focused on each other. And by the end of the week, a social worker came to pick up Roger and Ben. Because you know what? While everybody else's parents came to give them big hugs and collect all their stuff, they had nice suitcases. Roger and Ben had trash bags. And they had borrowed things. Roger and Ben pressed into me so hard with a big hug, and tears came down their rough and tough faces, and they said, "We don't want to leave. We don't want to go home." During the week, they shared the things that they saw and the things they were exposed to and the parents they didn't have and the things that they ran into on the street. We don't want to go back to that. And what could I do? I'm just a summer camp counselor. I made $205 a week. All I could say was, "I love you. Jesus loves you. I don't really want you to go back either. But what you had here, you can have somewhere else. And you still have each other." It broke my heart to feel powerless. It broke my heart to feel like all I could offer was love. Easter feels to me like someone saying, get up. The mission isn't over. Get up. The mission isn't over. Sometimes to get that feeling, you have to go back and remember where it all started for you too. I never wanted to be a pastor. Everything started for me at a Bible camp. Working with kids as a summer camp counselor. Being wiped out and totally exhausted and coming out at the end of the summer going, man, you know what? That was kind of dumb to exhaust yourself like that, but super awesome. And God, if you could find a way to let me do that with people, I'm in. And that's where ministry started for me. Sometimes you have to go back to the beginning and remember how your relationship started with God. In Luke 5, that's the story where Jesus calls his fishermen disciples. Simon Peter had been out fishing all night long on a lake, and he hadn't caught anything. Nothing. I don't know if Simon's a terrible fisherman, by the way, or if he just had a really rough night. But this is when he meets Jesus, because Jesus is this traveling rabbi, and he's teaching people, and he has this crowd of people following him, and he sort of teaches himself into a corner. There's a lake on one side, a crowd of people on the other. He runs out of room, and behind him are some fishing boats. And so to get more room, he steps into a fishing boat to finish his teaching. And whose fishing boat does he step into to finish his teaching but Simon Peter's? And so he finishes teaching, and then he says to Simon Peter, hey, why don't you put your boat out into deeper water and then let your nets down to catch some fish? And Simon Peter's like, I just spent all night doing that. Like, I'm the fisherman, you're the rabbi, you know? At Kembrook Bible Camp, where I was this summer camp counselor, we do this thing called the Jesus Walk. And I think I've talked about that before here. It's like a moving play around camp. So like all the counselors are different people in Jesus' life. Like somebody plays Jesus, and then people play the disciples, and somebody plays a Pharisee, and we all act out this play about Jesus' life. And so every scene is at a different spot around camp. It moves around so the kids don't get bored watching a play. We get up and we move to the next thing. And so you're kind of a part of the action. One summer I was able to play Peter as a disciple. And we didn't have a big fishing boat, by the way. We had a rowboat, tiny rowboat, okay? We didn't have fishing nets either. We had an old volleyball net that somebody ripped in half and off volleyball poles, so we used an old volleyball net as our fishing net. And we don't have a Bible in the middle of the lake to read. This is what Peter said. This is what so-and-so said. This is what happens if you drop your Bible in the lake. Well, that's not a good day, right? Okay. So we read the story like 1,000,000 times, and you try to remember, and you try to get in the shoes of the person that you're pretending to be. And you're like, what would they do in that situation? And then like 100 little kids stand on the shore of the lake, and they watch what's happening. And you pretend to be those people, and you try to make the Bible come to life for them, right? And so you get out there on the boat, and you act out this scene. And I remember, like, the Bible was always kind of this story. It was kind of flat until you step into it. And I remember this moment where Jesus calls the disciples. He's like, hey, go put your net out in the same water. I remember standing there, and then one disciple on one side of me, he's like, what does that guy think? We're going to put our nets down in the same water. It's the same water. There's no fish there. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's probably exactly what they were thinking. It's the same water. Why would this ever work? And then the disciple on the other side of me, he's like, guys, just do it, and maybe he'll leave us alone. Let's just do it, and he'll go away, right? And I'm like, yeah, they probably were like, let's just get rid of this guy. Like, yeah, that's probably exactly how they felt, right? Get rid of him. Because who is this dude? They never met him. They're the fishermen. They're the expert. He's just some guy. But they do it. Peter is skeptical. He's so skeptical about what is going to happen, but he does it anyway. He puts his fishing nets in the water. And what happens? He has this massive catch of fish. So Peter hauls the whole thing in. He gets to shore. He falls to his knees. He's like, Jesus, I'm a sinful man. You don't come near me. Like, I'm a sinful man. I didn't believe in you when you told me to do this. I didn't trust in you. Clearly, you're the real deal. Just depart from me. But Jesus doesn't say that. He doesn't depart from him. He says, look, get up. Follow me. From now on, you are going to be a fisher of men. That's what we're going to do. Put the fish away. You saw what I can do with fish? Watch what we're going to do with people. And so that's what they do. They're going to go fish for people. This is Peter's come follow me moment. This is his origin story. We're all about origin stories. This is his origin story. Come follow me. This is it. We have to place ourselves in the shoes of the fishermen. Place ourselves in the shoes of the disciples. Place ourselves in what they saw, what they felt. Hold these things in our hands as we read the story, as we think about Easter, because it's not long until we get to the spot where we were last week, when we start reading things like this, where Jesus predicts, the time is coming. It's here. You guys are going to leave me. You're scattering. You're going to go your own way, to your own homes. You're going to leave me alone. On Palm Sunday, last week, it sure looks like Jesus can come in as the conquering hero. Comes into Jerusalem, people are waving branches, shouting Hosanna. But he doesn't come in riding a white horse. He doesn't come in looking like a king. He doesn't come in with an army at his back. No, he comes in on a donkey, not waving a sword. And they are shouting, save us, save now. But you know what? He's not going to topple the Roman government the way they want him to. Instead, he is going to fulfill prophecies from Isaiah about being a suffering servant. He is going to change the world through self-giving love. It's going to come through death on a cross. And Jesus is going to prove, without a shadow of a doubt, that he's not the sword-wielding Messiah that they want. To the point that his followers are going to ask while he's being arrested, do you want us to get our swords out? Do you want us to defend you? And one of them isn't even going to wait for an answer. He's just going to start swinging. He's going to chop the ear off of one of the people coming to capture Jesus, and Jesus is going to heal the wound of his captor. Put your swords down. That's not our way. He's going to make it clear he's not the sword-wielding Messiah. Jesus is going to be arrested. He's going to head to his trial, and he's not going to try to break free. He's going to go silent. He's going to head to his flogging, and he's going to go silent. He's going to go before Pilate and Herod to be judged, and he's going to go silent. He's going to carry his cross for miles across the city to the hill where he'll be crucified, and he's going to go silent. He's going to be nailed to the cross, and he'll be silent, fulfilling another prophecy. But he's going to go silent, not trying to overthrow Rome, not trying to create a rebellion, not being the sword-wielding Messiah that they all thought he would be to overthrow the Roman government, but instead to be a suffering, humble servant. And when he's on the cross, before he dies, he asks his Father in heaven to forgive his persecutors. Jesus wasn't the Messiah that was expected. And he wasn't the one that they wanted. But he was the one that the world needed. And he wouldn't stay dead. The grave couldn't hold him. That's why we gather today. Romans 5:15 says this. Paul wrote these words many years later. He says, but the gift is not like the trespass. For if the many died by the trespass of the one man, how much more did God's grace and the gift that came by the grace of the one man, Jesus Christ, overflow to the many? The gift of Jesus is greater than sin. He says, consequently, just as one trespass resulted in condemnation for all people, so also one righteous act resulted in justification and life for all people. For just as through the disobedience of one man the many were made sinners, so also through the obedience of the one man the many will be made righteous. Jesus did all the work that needed to be done to make sure that we have peace in our relationship with God. But here's the thing. The disciples didn't understand that in the moment. In the moment, the disciples knew that he'd been killed. They knew that their rabbi had been murdered, crucified. He was gone. What they knew was that Jesus was dead, and he predicted that they would scatter, that they would go back to their homes. And for some, that's exactly what they did. When it feels like everything is falling apart, you go back to doing something you don't have to think much about. Fishermen fish. I worked at Kenbrook for a lot of years, which means I got to be a part of a lot of different Jesus walks, more than most people. We always told the story of the crucifixion of Jesus. The campers walk with Jesus. They participate in it, right? As we go from scene to scene, it's not secret. Everybody gets up and moves together. So we all walk around together. When we sit down and Jesus feeds the 5,000, the fishes and the loaves, we use goldfish crackers, right? Not real fish. And it's not 5,000. It's just like the 100 kids that are sitting on the hillside. If Jesus is teaching about the Lord's Prayer, he's teaching the disciples. We're acting it out. But he's teaching the kids that are sitting there too. If there's Pharisees coming up and they're like saying mean things to Jesus, the kids are right there too. And it's kind of fun at some point because you see the kids starting to defend Jesus when the Pharisees are being mean to Jesus. So at some point, the kids, they're in, right? They're in it. It's about as in as you can get without having to be a part of this moving around play. It's neat. But by the time you get to the crucifixion, we all feel the same way about it. Whether you're a disciple playing a part or you're a kid, we all feel pretty devastated that those guards just came in and grabbed him and they took him away. It's a moment that we all feel bad about. So when the crucifixion happens, we stop and we get into groups and we talk about it. But we all know, and we're here today to celebrate the fact that that's not where the story ends, right? And so at some point, somebody has to come in and grab us. Tell us that it's not done. Take us to the next scene. And over the years, we do different things. Sometimes we have to get to an empty tomb, and we celebrate the fact that Mary gets to the tomb, and it's women who are the very first evangelists. They get there first, and they tell the disciples about it. And sometimes we laugh at the fact that Mary thought Jesus was a gardener, and other times we laugh at the fact that Peter runs slower than the other disciples. And we do different things, different years with that next scene. But some years, and one in particular, we went to John 21. And that's a year that I was Peter. And that's a year when the disciples go back to fishing. John 21, you have Simon Peter and Nathanael, the sons of Zebedee, and two other disciples. And starting here, it says, "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them. And they said, "We'll go out with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. I'm feeling it more and more like Simon's just a terrible fisherman, to be honest with you. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat and you'll find some." When they did, they were unable to haul in the net because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple, whom Jesus loved, said to Peter, "It's the Lord." As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, "It is the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and he jumped into the water. You know, I played Peter for so many years, thought about what Peter went through, what he was like, had to pretend to be him, put myself in his shoes. Why go back to fishing? Why not carry on the mission? Well, what's it like when someone dies? What's it like when someone that you love dies? What's it like when someone that you follow and you believe in dies? You feel angry, frustrated, middle of grief, so deep that while he's fishing and Jesus is on the shore and he calls out to him, they have almost the exact same conversation that Peter has in his first calling, and Peter doesn't recognize it. But you know who does recognize it? It's John. The disciple who Jesus loves, that's John. John, who writes this, John, the disciple who Jesus loved. You got to love that. John wasn't even there when Peter's called. Realize that? So Peter probably told that story over and over and over to his buddies. This is how Jesus called me, the miraculous catch of fish. And he told the story again and again and again. So much so that John knows it by heart. So Peter's head is so in the sand with grief that while it's happening to him all over again, he can't even see it. He doesn't hear it. The similarities don't stick out to him. And it's somebody else in the boat that has heard Peter tell the story so many times that he pops his head up and goes, "What? This is happening again? Our nets are full again? What?" And he turns around and looks and he's like, "That's Jesus." And that's the moment that Peter goes, "Oh my goodness, it is," and turns around. And then as I thought about it, why would Peter jump out the boat? This is like when somebody talks about skydiving. Why would you jump out of a perfectly good plane? Jeff, why would you jump out of a perfectly good plane? Right? Why would you jump out of a perfectly good boat? Is this Peter's like walking on water number 2? You're going to do it again? I thought about this long and hard. Why would he jump? You got all those fish to drag in. Your buddies are in the boat. Just row to shore. In my mind, I think Peter is just, he has to hug him. He has to hold him. He has to touch him. He has to grab him. I don't care if it's proper or not. Jesus was dead and gone. He has to hold him, and he has to say sorry. Because what is the last thing that Jesus heard Peter do? Deny him. "Hey, Peter, don't you know that Jesus guy?" "Nope, not me, not me. I didn't know him." And how many times? 3. Over and over and over. And what did Peter say he would do? He said, "Jesus, I will never deny you. I would die for you. That's how much I love you." And when push came to shove, denied. So why would Peter jump out the boat? He just has to grab him. He just has to hold him. And he just has to get before him and say, "I am so sorry." And so when that moment came and that Jesus walked for me, that is what I did. That is why I jumped out of the boat. Because in my mind, that is the only reason. Get on shore, grab Jesus, and say sorry. And I believe that's when Jesus would say, "Peter, get up. The mission is still on." But here's what happens. Here's what Jesus says. He looks at Peter and he says, "Peter, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord, I love you." "Peter, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord, I love you." "Peter, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." And this is what Scripture says. If we read it in the plain English, it's fine. It's a good story. But we miss out on something super important. And I'm closing on this. I don't want you to miss this because I think this changes everything, and it changes everything for me. Greek word, agape, is love. And here's what agape love is. It's selfless love. It's unconditional love. It's perfect love. It's the kind of love that God has for Jesus, that Jesus has for you. It's perfect, selfless, unconditional love. You got to know that. And so when Peter is asked by Jesus, do you love me? He says agape. Do you love me unconditionally, Peter? And when Peter looks at Jesus, he says, Lord, you know I phileo love you. He doesn't say the same love back. Phileo is brotherly love. It's the kind of love you have when someone loves you. It's not unconditional. It's not perfect. It's brotherly love. Why? Why doesn't he use the same word? Because his life has proven he doesn't have perfect unconditional love for Jesus. He said he did. God, I would die for you. I'll never betray you. But the last thing he did before the crucifixion is betray him. Peter, do you love me? Not that love, but I brotherly love you. And they go back and forth like this. The first time, the second time. But look what happens the third time. Jesus says, Peter, do you brotherly love me? And Peter can respond and say back to him, yes, I do. I brotherly love you. That's the kind of love. Jesus makes the adjustment. Jesus comes to Peter. Jesus comes to where he is at. Peter's always been Mr. Foot and Mouth. Always so tough, always ready to step up, have the answer. He's rebuked Jesus. He's always Mr. I can do it. I would die for you. I'll never betray you. But when push came to shove, is Mr. Big Bad Peter really different than any other disciple? No. When push came to shove, didn't Peter even go back to casting that fishing line, throwing the net in the water, just like everybody else? But now, here we are, face to face with Jesus. And Jesus asks him the question, do you agape love me? Perfect, selfless love. Do you? And now humble Peter is ready to say, Lord, you know, I don't. My life has shown that I don't. But what I do is I phileo love you like a brother. That's what I have. That's what I can give right now. And so every time Jesus asks him, he fails. Every time he says, do you love me? It's a fail. Until the final one. Jesus meets him where he's at. And what follows then is a command. Then feed my sheep. If you love me, then feed my sheep. Peter, get up. The mission is still on. The mission's still on, Peter. Get up, man. If you love me, even like a brother, get up. The mission's still on. It's only just begun. The disciples are recalled. And this time, it's not just follow me. It starts with love and service and then follow me. I think that's what I like about this series, this Wilderness to Wonder, this W. I keep thinking about Lazarus being in the grave, and then Jesus shows up, rolls the stone away, and calls out, Lazarus, get up. Mission's not over, man. Let's go. I think about how with Easter, we get into the low part of the W, right? The valley of life. And we're climbing up. It's Easter Sunday. It's like, Satan does his worst. He plays his best joke. Or C.S. Lewis says the deepest magic. And then God calls into the grave. He calls into death itself. Jesus, get up, man. The mission's not over. And Satan's got to be like, what the? Come on. You're not supposed to be gone. But here we are. He's risen. The tomb is empty. And I don't know. I don't know if you are stuck in the low part of the W in life right now, in the valley of life. I don't know if you're stuck in like a rough cabin with Ben and Roger. Maybe you just need a voice to tell you, get up, the mission's still on. I needed someone to say, they're still yours. Peter needed someone to say, feed my sheep. So then hear this. Happy Easter. He is risen.
He is risen indeed.
What was lost was found. What was dead was given new life. The mission is still on. Get up. Let's pray.
Hi, this is Pastor Nick. Thanks for listening. I hope something that you heard today was very helpful. If you want to connect with us further, feel free to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, or our website, kanoichurch.org. Sure, I'm glad we're in this together.